life can feel pretty chaotic. Which is why I came to Lisbon.
Now, the truth is, I've been really struggling to switch off recently. I've always seen rest as a bit of a waste of time, like a negative space in a life where I've been constantly taught the importance of ambition, hard work, and accomplishment. And, even where I do give myself permission to take some time off and have a rest, I just end up feeling really guilty and anxious about it. Like, I feel as though I'm paying some form of tax on my own ambition and success, which I can only really resolve by keeping my head down and getting back to work. So the idea of this week is to do something I find really, really uncomfortable, and that is to rest.
My initial impression of Lisbon is that it's a cinematically beautiful and historically compelling city. I'm immediately struck by its combination of old world charm and cosmopolitan vibes, which makes the place instantly likeable. And while there's clearly a lot going on, life just feels a lot more relaxed around here. The pace of life is slower, and nobody seems to be in a rush. My villa was located in an atmospheric neighbourhood, sheltering a couple of pastelerias, traditional shops, and a swathe of shuttered houses faced with incredible azulejo tiles. And other than the sound of the odd dog barking, it was an incredibly quiet and relaxing place to stay.
One thing I've loved about Lisbon so far is that it's such a beautiful city to walk around. It's like one big art gallery. It's also been surprisingly easy to let my mind wander to creative thoughts about my life and the stuff that I want to do. Like, without actively trying, my brain has come up with some brilliant ideas for the YouTube channel. It's helped me to think of stuff that I want to do and also to explore some potential side hustles that I could work on. It's almost as though the creative side of my brain can switch on when I give it some breathing space, rather than trying to constantly squeeze out more work just for the sake of being more productive. There's actually this really interesting series of studies led by a couple of neuroscientists from Stanford University who basically measured the impact of walking on creative thinking. And what they found was that people scored significantly higher on creative thinking tests like Guilford's alternate uses test when they were walking, even if it's on a treadmill inside your house. Now, although the studies don't show exactly why this is the case, it definitely backs up the way I've been feeling as I walk around Lisbon. And it kind of reminds me of something the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote, which is, I have walked myself into my best thoughts. There's just something that seems to unlock the subconscious mind as you walk, and Lisbon is just a brilliant place to explore it with their beautiful streets and incredible hilltop terraces overlooking the city. But resting isn't something that comes easy to me.
I truly love the intellectual challenge of hard work, the sense of purpose and accomplishment that comes from getting stuff done, and the feeling of properly immersing myself in a tricky problem is genuinely a lot of fun. Like, some of my best memories in life have been the product of hard work. So, for me at least, work isn't a bad thing. It's a necessary part of a more meaningful and fulfilling life. But what is the balance between working hard and giving yourself the opportunity to rest?
Well, from what I've read about all of this, it all comes down to our level of focus when we are in fact working. Basically, if we're working intentionally and deliberately, like properly focusing in on our work, we can only really do about 4 hours of work a day. Like, sure, you can do more than 4 hours of work in a given day, and knowing me, I probably will end up doing far more than 4 hours of work in a day, but after that 4-hour time limit, our amount of useful output will start to gradually decline. For example, I love this study by a couple of psychology professors that surveyed their colleagues about their work habits and their schedules to see whether or not the number of hours they spent in the office correlated to the number of articles that they produced. Now, what I expected to see was this straight line graph, where the more time they spent in the office, the greater the number of articles they produce. But surprisingly, this just wasn't the case. The data actually showed that those professors that worked for 25 hours a week were no more productive than those that worked for just 5 hours a week. And those professors that worked for 35 hours a week were around half as productive as their 25-hour-a-week colleagues. So while I'm out here in Lisbon, I'm forcing myself to do just 3 to 4 hours of highly focused work every single day, whether it's here in the villa or out in the city centre. Like today, I've done about a couple of really quick meetings and another 2 hours of really highly focused work. And so now I can rest, I can record this video, I can go to town and I can chill out, and I can take really deliberate rest where I'm just not thinking about my work at all. And my main takeaway so far is that I have this added level of drive and motivation to get my work done, because I know in just 2 or 3 hours time, I'm going to be able to switch off and completely forget about my work, rather than dragging out that work throughout the entire day.
So after I finish my work each day, I go straight into the city to explore. One of my favourite things to do is to walk up the steep, winding streets to find one of the many different viewpoints scattered across the city, and grab a pastel de nata while taking the amazing views over the rooftops and river. Then I head back down the hill to find a restaurant to try out some of the local and not so local food that was on offer.
One thing I've also been exploring is this idea of stopping to rest when things are going well. Now, normally my urge would be to stop working when things are going poorly, but the idea of stopping to rest when things are going well means that 1, it makes it so much easier to pick up that work again later, and 2, it kind of just teases your subconscious mind to think about that work while you're away doing other things, whether it's the next paragraph of your essay, whether it's the next scene in your video, or whether it's just like a business idea that's been floating around in your head. For example, in one really interesting study by a group of researchers from Sydney, they asked 90 students to think of as many novel uses of a piece of paper to test their creative and divergent thinking skills. So some people worked on the task for 4 minutes straight, and another group worked on the task for 2 minutes, took a 5-minute break, and then continued working on that task for a further 2 minutes. Eventually they found that the group that took the break generated substantially more ideas than those who worked for 4 minutes straight. And apparently this is all down to something known as our default mode network, which is this constant pattern of activity that happens inside our brain when we're in a resting state. So this basically shows that there must be some amount of background processing that helps our work, especially creative work, when we're not actively thinking about it. It's really weird to think, but sometimes the most productive thing we can do is to just stop working, which is why I'm now going to head off and do some more exploring.
If you make just one day trip from Lisbon, my recommendation would be to visit the hilltop town of Sintra, the former residence of Portuguese royalty and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Not only does the town boast two of Portugal's most extraordinary palaces, it also contains a semi-tropical garden, a Moorish castle, and it's pretty close to some great beaches too. It's quite literally the perfect place to detach from work. No work, no slack, and no worrying about my ever-growing to-do list. Some great research has actually been done by the German sociologist Sabine Sonnentag on the importance of detachment as a source of mental and physical recovery from work. Over the course of decades, her findings have been consistent. Workers who have the chance to get away mentally, switch off and devote their energies elsewhere are more productive, have better attitudes, get along better with their colleagues, and are better able to deal with challenges at work. So I used this day to be completely absorbed by what I was seeing and what I was doing. From the stunning gardens to the National Palace of Pena, which stands out as the renowned jewel in the crown of the Sintra Hills, I allowed myself to get lost in its fairy tale-like charm.
One thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is, what do I actually mean by rest? Like, in what state of rest am I the most relaxed, happy, creative, and things like that? Well, I think for me at least, the times where I feel most refreshed, creative, and energized are during those times of deep play. Like, those times where I'm having lots of fun, but I'm still leveling up some sort of personal skill or improving my knowledge in some way. Things that completely absorb my brain in an intellectually stimulating way and give me a kind of mental refuge from ordinary life. I think I'd go as far as saying that rest is actually a pretty active process. Like, it's not just watching TV or sitting down and doing nothing, it's actually going out and experiencing the local way of life. It's finding an activity that challenges me or doing some form of strenuous exercise like swimming or running. There's also like a ton of research showing the mental health benefits of exercise too, so we're not only allowing ourselves a rest, but we're also encouraging our brain to develop too. So there are studies from like Harvard University and Boston University, for example, that have shown that exercise encourages the production of neurotrophins, which are the proteins that are responsible for the formation and growth of neurons. And apparently running is particularly effective here. Like, if you regularly go on long runs, there's some evidence to suggest that you can generate twice the number of neurons in your hippocampus compared to someone who has a pretty sedentary lifestyle. But I don't want to dive too deep into the performance benefits of exercise here. Like, the point I'm trying to make is that resting doesn't have to mean doing nothing. It can very easily mean leveling ourselves up and improving a skill in many different contexts. And when you start to see rest in this way, you don't feel quite so bad about taking time off work because you're still learning and you're still becoming a better version of yourself over time.
The Portuguese poet Fernando Pessoa wrote, "Wise is he who enjoys the show offered by the world." And this is what I think rest is all about. Finding time to regularly enjoy what the world has to offer. Doing this means fully detaching from our work and using our time to explore, play, and be curious. Regularly and decisively breaking from our jobs, disconnecting from the office in the evenings and on weekends, and choosing to do things that are relaxing, mentally absorbing, and physically challenging. In other words, engaging in a form of active rest will promote recovery of our mental resources and make us more effective, productive, and focused when we do decide to work. Rest, to me at least, is like a medicine that needs a regular dosage. Finding a healthy balance of work and rest during the day is definitely important, but so is finding a rhythm of allowing yourself to explore new places and see what the world has to offer. Too many of us get caught up in the day-to-day roller coaster of our lives, and we completely forget the bigger picture. It's just so easy to get fixated on our stresses, anxieties, and worries. We fail to notice the little things that give life its magic. So the key takeaway for me is that rest isn't a bad thing that I should try and shy away from. It's a crucial part of living both a happy life and a more meaningful life, helping me to work with greater focus and fully embracing, experiencing, and enjoying more of the world around me.